The crimson moons of Xeran Prime cast their bloody light across the obsidian floor of the Galactic Council chambers. Ambassador Zara Chen stood motionless, her earth-brown eyes scanning the assembled alien dignitaries with the patience of a predator waiting for the perfect moment to strike. The humans called it diplomacy. The rest of the galaxy called it weakness. "Look at her," sneered Warlord Kalen Vex, his massive frame towering over the council table like a monument to brutality. His scales rippled with bioluminescent patterns that pulsed in rhythm with his contempt. The soft pink flesh thinks it belongs among warriors. The chamber erupted in what passed for laughter among the Xeran Empire, chittering, hissing, and growling sounds that would have made lesser beings flee in terror. But Zara Chen had not survived 3 years as humanity's sole representative in this den of apex predators by being lesser anything. She smiled. It was the kind of smile that made veteran soldiers check their weapons twice. "Warlord Vex." Her voice carried across the chamber with crystalline clarity, each word measured and precise. "Your reputation precedes you, though I must admit the stories made you sound taller." The laughter died instantly. In Xeran culture, height was directly correlated with dominance. To question one's stature was to question their right to exist. Every eye in the chamber fixed on the human ambassador, waiting for Vex to tear her apart molecule by molecule. Instead, something unexpected happened. Vex laughed. It was a sound like boulders grinding together, deep and resonant enough to vibrate through the floor. "The little pink thing has fangs. How delightful." His serpentine tongue flicked out, tasting the air for fear. He found none. "Tell me, Ambassador Chen, what makes you think your pathetic species deserves a seat at this table?" "Same thing that makes you think yours does," Zara replied, her tone conversational. "We're still breathing." The Xeran Empire had conquered 17 star systems in the past decade. Their military doctrine was simple: crush, consume, conquer. They respected only strength, and they measured strength in the ability to inflict violence. Humanity, with its preference for negotiation and peaceful resolution, was viewed as prey masquerading as predator. "Breathing is temporary," rumbled Chancellor Thorne, the Empire's military strategist. His cybernetic implants whirred as he leaned forward. "Your species has no concept of true warfare. You fight with rules, with mercy, with weakness." "We prefer the term efficiency," Zara said, examining her fingernails with studied indifference. "Why waste energy on prolonged suffering when a quick death serves the same purpose?" Warlord Vex's eldest son, Commander Drak Vex, chose that moment to make his entrance. At 7 feet tall with muscles like twisted steel cables, he embodied everything the Xeran Empire valued: power, brutality, the absolute certainty that might made right. "Father," Drak's voice was silk-wrapped around razors, "surely we're not still entertaining this creature's presence?" The way he said "creature" made it clear exactly what he thought of humanity's representative. It also made it clear that he'd inherited more than just his father's size. "Ah, the progeny arrives," Zara observed, her tone bright with false cheer. "Let me guess, you're here to demonstrate the legendary Xeran intellect I've heard so much about?" Drak's scales flushed deep crimson, a sure sign of rising anger among the species. "You dare mock the bloodline of Vex?" "Mock? Oh no, Commander. I'm simply observing." She tilted her head like a curious bird studying a particularly interesting insect. "Tell me, in your extensive military experience, how many wars has the Xeran Empire actually won?" The question hung in the air like a challenge thrown down at high noon. Every being in the chamber knew the answer. The Xeran Empire had conquered worlds, enslaved populations, and carved out an empire through sheer brutality. But won? Actually, definitively won against an opponent that fought back with equal ferocity? The silence stretched until it became uncomfortable. "We have conquered 17 systems," Drak snarled, his massive hands clenching into fists. "Conquered. Yes. Won? That's a different question entirely." Zara's smile widened, revealing teeth that seemed somehow sharper than they had moments before. "Conquest implies overwhelming superior numbers or technology against inferior opponents. Victory implies defeating an equal opponent through superior strategy, tactics, or will." Warlord Vex leaned back in his throne-like chair, his ancient eyes studying the human with newfound interest. 3 centuries of warfare had taught him to recognize dangerous opponents, and something in the ambassador's casual confidence triggered every survival instinct he possessed. "And you believe humanity could provide such equal opposition?" he asked carefully. "Oh, Warlord Vex." Zara's laugh was music with edges. "I don't believe anything. I know." Commander Drak surged his feet, the motion so violent that his chair crashed backward into the wall. "You insignificant pink worm. I could snap you in half with one hand." "Could you?" Zara remained seated, unimpressed by the display. How fascinating. And here I thought Xeran warriors were trained to think before they acted. "I am trained." Drak roared, spittle flying from his fanged maw. "I am the finest warrior of my generation." "Finest warrior." Zara nodded thoughtfully. "Of your generation. In a military that's never actually fought anyone who fought back effectively." She stood smoothly, her movement fluid and controlled. "Tell me, Commander, in all your training, did anyone ever teach you about humans?" "What is there to know? You're weak, slow, fragile. You die easily." "Some of us do," she agreed pleasantly. "But then again, some of us don't." The temperature in the chamber seemed to drop several degrees. Even the other council members, species that had survived in this predatory environment through cunning and careful alliances, found themselves leaning away from the human ambassador. "You speak boldly for someone so soft," Chancellor Thorne observed, his mechanical voice lacking inflection. "Soft." Zara's eyebrows rose in apparent surprise. "Who told you I was soft?" "Everyone knows humans are soft," Drak sneered. "Physically weak, emotionally compromised, mentally inferior. Your entire species is built for submission. Built for submission." She repeated the words slowly, as if tasting them. "How interesting. And who exactly told you this?" "It's common knowledge." Drak's frustration was building to dangerous levels. Every species in the galaxy knows humanity is pathetic. Every species except humanity, apparently. Zara's smile turned predatory. "Tell me, Commander, would you like a demonstration of exactly how soft humans can be?" Warlord Vex straightened in his chair. Centuries of combat experience had taught him to read the signs, and every instinct screamed that the chamber's dynamics had just shifted in ways that could prove catastrophic. "Drak," he said quietly, "perhaps you should—" "No, Father." The younger Xeran's pride had been pricked, and wounded pride made for poor decisions. "I will not be lectured by this pathetic creature." He moved with the speed of a trained predator, crossing the chamber in 3 massive strides. His intention was clear: grab the human, demonstrate her fragility, and settle the question of Xeran's superiority once and for all. What happened next would be talked about in hushed whispers across 17 star systems for decades to come. Drak's massive hand reached for Zara's throat. She moved aside with minimal effort, her motion so economical it seemed casual. His momentum carried him past her, and she helped him along with the gentlest touch between his shoulder blades. The 7-foot Xeran warrior crashed face first into the obsidian wall with enough force to crack the stone. "Oh my," Zara said mildly, examining her fingernails again. "How clumsy of you, Commander." Drak peeled himself off the wall, his scales now flushed with embarrassment as much as anger. "Lucky," he snarled, blood trickling from his muzzle. "Was it?" she asked with genuine curiosity. "Would you like to test that theory?" Pride, the downfall of warriors across the galaxy since time immemorial. Drak had been raised on stories of Xeran supremacy, trained from birth to believe in his species' inherent superiority. The idea that a human, a soft, weak, pathetic human, could outmaneuver him was simply unacceptable. He attacked again, this time with calculated fury instead of blind rage. Combat techniques honed over decades of training, movements that had earned him victories against some of the galaxy's most dangerous predators. Zara Chen, daughter of Earth, ambassador to the stars, and graduate of humanity's most elite military programs, watched him come with the patience of eternity itself. She stepped inside his guard as easily as walking through an open door. Her elbow found the cluster of nerve endings just below his rib cage with surgical precision. As he doubled over Gasping, her knee introduced itself to his solar plexus with enough force to lift his feet off the ground. But she wasn't finished. Not even close. As Drak fell, she caught his right arm and twisted. The sound that followed was wet and final. Something that had taken nature millions of years to evolve and Xeran science decades to enhance snapped like a dry branch. Commander Drak Vex, heir to the Xeran Empire's greatest warlord, finest warrior of his generation, dropped to the obsidian floor clutching a limb that would never function properly again. The chamber fell silent, except for his whimpering. Soft, Zara mused, stepping over the fallen warrior like he was a piece of furniture. What an interesting word choice. She returned to her seat with the same fluid grace she displayed throughout the encounter, smoothing her diplomatic robes as if nothing had happened. Warlord Vex stared at his son, then at the human, then back at his son. 3 centuries of warfare had not prepared him for this moment, not because of the violence was expected, but because of what the violence revealed. His son, the pride of the Xeran military, heir to a legacy of conquest that stretched back generations, had been dismantled by a creature they dismissed as prey, and she'd made it look effortless. Now then, Ambassador Chen said pleasantly, shall we discuss humanity's application for full council membership? I believe we have much to offer this organization. The crimson light of Xeran Prime's twin moons painted everything in shades of blood and shadow. But in that moment, as Drak Vex writhed on the floor and his father finally understood the true meaning of the word dangerous, it was clear that the most dangerous predator in the chamber was the one they called soft. ## Part 2. The medics who arrived attended Commander Drak Vex move with the efficient precision of beings who had seen battlefield trauma across 17 conquered worlds. Yet even they paused when they saw the damage. The young Xeran's arm hung at an angle that defied anatomy, and his breathing came in short, pained gasps that echoed to the suddenly quiet chamber. Curious, Warlord Vex said finally, his voice carrying the weight of 3 centuries. In all my years of conquest, I have never seen a warrior disabled so efficiently. Ambassador Chen straightened an imaginary wrinkle in her diplomatic uniform. Efficiency is something of a human specialty, Warlord. We've had considerable practice. Practice? Chancellor Thorne's cybernetic components whirred as he processed this information. Against what opponents? Each other, mostly. Her tone was conversational, as if discussing the weather. Humans have been perfecting the art of warfare for approximately 10,000 years. We've gotten quite good at it. The assembled council members exchanged glances. Interspecies conflict was common throughout the galaxy, but sustained warfare within a single species for millennia? That suggested a level of sustained aggression that challenged every assumption they'd made about human nature. Your son, Zara continued, addressing Warlord Vex directly, fought with the technique of someone trained to dominate weaker opponents. Impressive against civilians, certainly. Less effective against someone who spent their entire life learning to kill beings exactly like him. Beings like him? Vex's scales rippled with barely contained fury. Large, strong, confident in their superiority. She smiled that razor-edged smile again. We call them bullies in most human languages. Every human child learns to deal with bullies before they learn to read. Commander Drak tried to speak, but only managed a weak gurgle. The medical team carefully strapped him to a transport gurney, their movements gentle despite the species-wide reputation for brutality. Even among predators, there was respect for fallen warriors. You broke my son, Vex said quietly. No, Zara corrected. I disabled a threat that declares intention to harm me. There's a difference. Semantics. Precision. She leaned forward slightly, and every being in the chamber felt the shift in atmosphere. Your son attacked a diplomatic representative during official proceedings. In human culture, we call that an act of war. The silence that followed was profound. War between humanity and the Xeran Empire would be catastrophic, not because of the potential for destruction, but because of the precedent it would set. If humans could successfully resist Xeran expansion, other species might find the courage to do the same. Act of war, rumbled Senior Counselor Yake, the eldest member of the Assembly. His 4 arms gestured in patterns that conveyed deep concern. Strong words from a species of 3 billion against an empire of 30 trillion. Numbers. Zara's laugh was like breaking crystal. How wonderfully naive. Tell me, senior counselor, how many humans do you think it would take to destroy this space station? The question hung in the recycled air like a challenge. The station was massive, home to millions of beings, protected by the most advanced defensive systems the Xeran Empire could devise. Answer carefully, she continued when no one spoke. Your response will determine whether humanity views this council as a body worth joining or an obstacle to be removed. Warlord Vex found himself in the unusual position of being genuinely uncertain. 3 centuries of conquest had taught him to evaluate threats, and Ambassador Chen radiated danger in ways that defied conventional analysis. She wasn't large, wasn't obviously armed, wasn't even particularly intimidating in appearance. Yet every instinct screamed that she was the most dangerous being in the chamber. "1," he said finally. "Correct." Her approval was somehow more unsettling than her threats. Though it would depend on the human. Of course, some of us are more versatile than others. Chancellor Thorne's mechanical voice carried a note of skepticism. "You claim a single human could destroy the station?" "I don't claim anything, Chancellor. I simply acknowledge capabilities." She stood smoothly, her movement fluid as water. "Would you like a demonstration?" "No." The word exploded from Vex with surprising force. "That will not be necessary." "Wise." Zara nodded approvingly. Wisdom is so rare among conquered species. The verbal blade found its mark. Every council member felt the sting of truth. They weren't conquerors. They were the conquered species that submitted to Xeran dominance rather than face extinction. Only the humans had never bent the knee. "Your species interests me," Vex admitted. 3 years you have sat in this chamber, enduring insults, threats, and challenges to your right to exist. Yet you show no fear. "Fear is inefficient," she replied. "It clouds judgment and impairs performance. Humans learn to manage fear long before we learn to manage fire." "And how exactly does one manage fear?" Her smile was sharp enough to cut reality. "By becoming something more frightening than whatever you're afraid of." Commander Drak was finally wheeled from the chamber, his broken arm secured in a medical stabilizer that pulsed with healing energy. As he passed his father's position, he managed to lift his head enough to speak. "Kill her," he whispered, his voice raw with pain and humiliation. "Kill her and make her species pay." Warlord Vex looked down at his son, then across the chamber to Human, who had dismantled 3 decades of warrior training in less than 30 seconds. "No," he said quietly. The word carried absolute finality. Drak's eyes widened in shock, but the medical team was already moving him toward the chamber's exit. His father's decision would haunt him for the rest of his life, though he would live long enough to understand his wisdom. "Interesting choice," Zara observed. "Survival often requires interesting choices." Vex settled back in his throne-like chair, his ancient eyes studying the Human with newfound respect. "Tell me, Ambassador Chen, what does humanity want?" "The same thing every species wants, Warlord, to exist without interference. And if interference becomes necessary?" Her expression didn't change, but the temperature in the chamber seemed to drop another degree. "Then interference becomes inadvisable." Senior Counselor Yake cleared his throat, a sound like grinding stone. "The Council must vote on humanity's application for membership. Given today's demonstration, I believe we have sufficient information to make an informed decision." "Do we?" Chancellor Thorne's mechanical components whirred ominously. "What exactly have we learned? That humans can fight? Every species can fight when cornered." "We've learned," Vex said slowly, "that humans choose when to fight. And when they choose to fight, they fight to win. As opposed to fighting for dominance, fighting for territory, fighting for resources." The old warlord scales ripple with patterns that convey deep thought. Humans fight for victory. Complete, absolute final victory. Zara tilted her head slightly, acknowledging the accuracy of his assessment. Victory is the only acceptable outcome of conflict. Everything else is merely delayed defeat. "Your son," Yake said to Vex, "will recover? His arm will heal, though it will never be as strong as before. His pride." Vex shrugged. a gesture that encompassed millennia of hard-earned wisdom. Pride is more fragile than bone. Good, Zara said mildly. Broken pride heals stronger than original pride, assuming the being is intelligent enough to learn from the experience. And if he is not, then he will provide additional educational opportunities for himself and others. The threat was delivered with such casual politeness that several council members actually shuddered. The humans didn't just defeat opponents. They learned from every encounter and applied those lessons to future conflicts. It was a species-wide characteristic that explained their rapid technological advancement and their complete absence from any list of conquered worlds. I call for a vote, Senior Counselor Yake announced. All in favor of granting humanity full membership in the Galactic Council? The response was unanimous. Even Chancellor Thorne, whose cybernetic nature made him virtually immune to intimidation, raised his mechanical appendage in agreement. Oppose. Silence. Abstaining. More silence. Then it is decided. Yake's forearms moved in ceremonial patterns as ancient as star travel itself. Humanity is granted full membership, with all rights and responsibilities thereof. Ambassador Chen bowed slightly, a gesture of acknowledgement rather than submission. Humanity accepts this honor and looks forward to productive relationships with all council members. As the formal ceremonies concluded and the various species began filing out of the chamber, Warlord Vex remained seated. His ancient eyes tracked the human ambassador as she gathered her materials with the same careful precision she displayed in dismantling his son. Ambassador Chen, he called out when the chamber had mostly emptied. She paused in her preparations, giving him her full attention. Yes, Warlord. My son will want revenge. I expect he will. I cannot guarantee his behavior once he heals. Her smile was warmer now, though no less dangerous. Warlord Vex, I appreciate your honesty, but you should understand something about humans. Yes. We don't require guarantees. We prefer to handle our own problems. And if those problems become significant, then they become educational experiences for everyone involved. Vex nodded slowly. 3 centuries of warfare had taught him to recognize superior predators, and he was looking at one now, not superior in size or strength, but in something far more dangerous. The absolute certainty that whatever came next, she would be ready for it. One final question, he said as she reached the chamber's exit. Of course. How many like you are there? Ambassador Zara Chen, daughter of Earth, graduate of humanity's most elite programs, and the woman who had just changed the balance of power in 17 star systems with one broken arm and a smile, paused at the threshold. Warlord Vex, she said pleasantly, there are over 3 billion humans in known space. She let that sink in for a moment before adding the words that would haunt his dreams for years to come. I'm one of the gentle ones. The door sealed behind her with a soft hiss, leaving Warlord Vex alone with his thoughts and the sudden, uncomfortable realization that the galaxy had just become a much more dangerous place. Not because humanity had gained a seat at the council table, but because everyone else had finally learned what it meant to sit across from them,